World of Warships Legends is both a team game and a strategy game. And for all intents and purposes, the strategy in this game centers around one crucial concept, that of positioning. Now, you can tell me, for example, that your commander build makes a huge difference in the way your ship plays, and that's true. The commander build and your module selection, all of those things can help determine the efficacy of your ship, yes. But ultimately, you can be running a rank 16 legendary 4 commander on your vessel, and if you put that vessel in a bad place on the map, then it really doesn't matter how much the commander is buffing your accuracy or decreasing your torpedo reload time. What you need to do is think about where is the best place on the map to put my ship. Once you start doing that, then everything follows from it. Now, in this particular game, we're playing the Tier 7 Tech Tree IJN Gunboat Destroyer, Akizuki, and we spawned in the center. But obviously we're not going to play the center because the way this map is set up, the caps in the center are in each team's spawn, and there's no way we can push into Delta. Doing so would just be a death sentence for us. So instead, we're going out toward the Alpha flank to provide both spotting and hopefully contest the Alpha cap. Meanwhile, our other destroyer teammate who spawned at Charlie and is playing that side has now entered the Charlie cap. But if you look at the minimap, a huge problem is already developing. Aside from a single cruiser who has taken up position behind an island near the Charlie cap, that destroyer has absolutely no support. The rest of my team is pushing over toward Alpha in a straight line composed of battleships and cruisers, and in fact we've just lost our first cruiser who for whatever reason decided to push straight into the Alpha cap. That is never what you want to do in a cruiser this early on in the game. Pushing bow in, even in something like the Edinburgh, is always a mistake, especially when there are this many battleships and probably a cruiser or two that are shooting at you. The Edinburgh, I don't care that it has 30 millimeters of armor, it's not going to stand up to that kind of firepower. But in any case, the fact that pretty much the entirety of our team is coming over on this side means that the destroyer in Charlie has no support, and therefore he's really not going to be able to take that cap. He's got a destroyer of his own to deal with and 2 battleships. And now we take a torpedo from an unknown source, obviously an enemy destroyer, and this, I don't know if it was necessarily a mistake on my part to take that torpedo, but this sort of puts us into hard mode for the rest of the game. Luckily, the torpedoes that we launched earlier at the Massachusetts B managed to catch the Fiji and take him out for our first kill of the game, so at least we're even in terms of ship trades with the enemies. We both each lost a cruiser, but the situation here is developing poorly. We've used one of our torpedo reload boosters, and we've got more torps on the way toward that Massachusetts, and plus they may end up hitting the Gneisenau. But on the other side of the map, the friendly cruiser has come out from behind the safety of the island. Our destroyer is still trying to take Charlie, but obviously it's contested by the enemy destroyer. And really, those two over there have absolutely no support. They're dealing with 2 battleships and a destroyer. And because my team has come over here on the Alpha cap, I want you to take note of their positioning on the map. For all intents and purposes, they're concentrated within like the same 2 grid squares. This is never what you want. You want your teammates to spread out. You don't want ships to be close to each other, especially battleships. A battleship becomes less potent the closer it is to its battleship teammates. You want everything to spread out because if you're all in 1 grid square, or even 2 grid squares, then the enemy ships you're facing have only one direction to angle in order to mitigate AP damage, okay? So you want to spread out so that the enemy cannot angle to only one part of the map. They have to choose, where do they angle? Do they angle against you, or do they angle against your teammate over there on their broadside? The goal for your battleships, at least, is to create crossfires, and none of mine are doing that. And besides, since they're all over here and they've completely abandoned the Charlie cap, we actually have an enemy battleship in the center going right for that Atlanta. It's a Caracciolo, so that Atlanta's obviously not going to survive. Meanwhile, the enemy team is able to push into the Alpha cap. These battleships, by the way, on both of these teams are doing things that I simply can't comprehend. There is no reason for this Massachusetts to be inside of the Alpha Cap. There is no reason for the battleship that we lost a few minutes ago to push into the Alpha Cap. Yes, the objectives are important, but it's always a poor trade to lose your ship in an attempt to take an objective, especially when you don't even take the objective. Literally no reason for you to push your battleship into a cap. The job that you have really is to find a place on the map where you have access to the enemy's broadside if you're playing a battleship, and nobody across either team is doing this. The Massachusetts is pushed into the Alpha Cap. He's being focused by all of my teammates, so he's going to go down. And luckily, we are going to get the sinking blow. Massachusetts B goes down as our third kill of the game. But now we're in a terrible position. All three of our capital ship teammates, the cruiser and the two battleships, are concentrated within still the same 2 grid squares north of the Alpha Cap. One of the battleships is trying to spread out, but there's an enemy destroyer somewhere around here, and he's not really going to be able to do that. Meanwhile, our destroyer on the other side is doing, honestly, a great job. He's doing all he can in order to try to secure that Charlie Cap. It's been taken by the Reds. He's back inside of it now. He might be able to flip it, but obviously the other enemy destroyer is in the Bravo Cap, and he's got a Heinrich to support him. So I sort of have a choice here. What do? Do I go back toward Bravo and try to counter that destroyer, or do I go toward Alpha? Honestly, difficult decision. If I go back toward Bravo and I get spotted, which I surely will, I'm sure that enemy destroyer will outspot me, given I'm built for full gunboat capabilities, so my concealment's not all that great. It's 6.1 kilometers by sea. So I go back to that Bravo Cap, I get outspotted by the enemy destroyer. He's got a Heinrich right on top of my forehead, and the Heinrich shreds what remains of my hit points with his secondaries and his main guns, not to mention what the destroyer itself can do to me with its guns. So ultimately I decide the best move is to push into Alpha. There's only at least one Massachusetts over here, so that means the combined firepower of 2 battleships and a single cruiser should be able to take out that Massachusetts, but it's not happening quickly enough. We need to take out this Massachusetts, like, right now. So I'm going to enter the Alpha Cap, and I'm debating, what do? Do I start shooting at the Massachusetts and add a little bit of my damage to the mix to hopefully take him down earlier? Do I launch some torps at him? Well, he's on very low health, so at this point, we're thinking we can probably end him. We don't want to give him the opportunity to start healing. He needs to go down now. We need to clear this Alpha Cap, and we need to take it. And I decide Massachusetts is not going down as quickly as I want. I really can't afford to take a full salvo from him, much less a number of secondary hits. So I end up smoking up to break his line of sight, and hopefully we'll be able to finish him off with our gun power. Our cruiser teammate is also trying to farm him, but we're closer. We can land all of our shells, and we are able to take out the Massachusetts for our 4th kill of the game. Now we're inside the Alpha Cap. We'll be able to take it. There's a destroyer spotted on the outside. Looks like he's hunting our battleship. But you see here, we have absolutely no control of the map. The enemy team has taken our spawn. They still have Delta, and they're about to take Charlie. Our destroyer on the other side, again, he's done a great job trying to play that side, but there's very little he can do at this point. He's only one guy over there. He's got no support. My teammates are over here with me, and as a consequence, we have no map control. And what I mean by that is ideally, we would have wanted to split our forces the way the enemy team did. We would have wanted more ships to go over to Charlie to support that destroyer and that Atlanta over there, at least a battleship or 2. But they didn't. They all came over to this side, leaving those 2 alone over there, and the enemy team didn't do the same thing. Yes, their force on this side has been dispatched, and yes, we are ahead in terms of kills, but the enemy has map control thanks to their positioning. And all they did was spread out their forces. They put some ships over by Charlie, they put some ships over by Alpha. And even though we had more ships over here, and we were able to sink more enemies than they sunk of us, it doesn't matter because the enemies have taken 3 out of the 4 of the caps. And there's less than 5 minutes left to go in this game. We're never going to overtake them on points unless we start contesting this cap. And even if we do, we're still going to be at a disadvantage. We're going to need to sink these ships. And you might be looking at this thinking, this really isn't a problem. You've got 4 ships left versus 3. But again, this game really does not come down to how accurate are your guns, how well can you shoot at the other ships or torpedo them. No, it comes down to where do you put your ships on the map. And if you don't put them in ideal places, then you're going to end up losing if the enemy team is able to position better. So the enemy team has control of essentially this entire map. We've got control of none of it. I initially wanted to go through the gap in between these islands to get into Delta as fast as possible, but there were Fletcher torpedoes behind me, so I didn't want to take the risk of sailing in front of them and getting hit by them and taken out, because then we would certainly lose. Now I'm going to attempt to push into the Delta cap, but we do have a problem here, and that problem is my concealment. I'm going to be outspotted by the enemy destroyer, which, honestly, that's not that big of a deal. If you have poor concealment on a good gunboat like this, you can still, obviously, have a huge impact on the game. I mean, we've taken out 5 ships, and how many has the enemy actually lost? 6? So we're responsible for the vast majority of our team's kills, and unfortunately it has come to pass that the destroyer is outspotting us. He's got the Heinrich over there and the Riga, both of whom can shoot at us, so there's no way we can continue to push in. We used our last smokescreen charge versus the Massachusetts, which in retrospect, I don't know if that was a mistake or not. It might have been. If we had the smokescreen here, we'd be able to farm at least a little bit of damage, but we're going to have to run away. Because that destroyer is outspotting us, he is very wisely not shooting at us. If he did, of course, he would reveal his location, and we'd be able to shoot back at him. But actually, I spoke too soon. He is shooting at us now. It's a scone, and, well, we're debating on shooting at him, but if we do, there's the Heinrich 9 kilometers away from us. We're within his secondary range, and we've only got 3,600 HP left. So the Heinrich really could take us out in a single salvo. We're going to have to wait and rely on our torpedoes to hopefully do some damage to him. And you would think that the battleships over here would maybe be able to take him out, considering he's broadside to at least one of them, or he was. Or at the very least, they could maybe deal some damage to that Riga. That Riga is the entire reason, really, that I'm not pushing in further at this point, because he is, of course, a radar cruiser with a long range. He may not be a high DPM cruiser, so it may be somewhat difficult for him to take us out if he's just alone, but if he spots us for his teammates, we're basically toast. And now, at this point, it's make or break time. Our Gneisenau teammate has pushed in too far. He's behind the islands over there. The scone is going for him in a YOLO run. I'm trying to get some fire on the scone and take him out. It'd be great if our other battleship and our cruiser were doing the same, and they're not for some reason. They're shooting at other ships, which is going to spell disaster for the Gneisenau. The scone is obviously going to win this contest. The Gneisenau doesn't really have great main battery power, and that's kind of what you need when a destroyer is YOLOing you in a battleship. But if you got 6 guns and none of the shells are even going to hit what you're shooting at, like the Gneisenau's, well, then you're going to sink. And so it happens. The Gneisenau sinks. The enemy's at like 900 points. We've got 500. Only possible way we can win is by taking down all 3 of these ships. And for whatever reason, we can't seem to do that, despite the fact that the Prinz Heinrich is absolutely broadside to our last remaining battleship, which is in Iowa. Well, we're shooting, and of course, we get taken out. We have no HP left. And even if we had lived, I don't think we would have won. The Heinrich is at least on low health, but the Riga might as well be at full health, and we have no idea where the destroyer is. That destroyer doesn't even need to be spotted if he doesn't want to be. So tragically, despite my Kraken Unleashed and nearly 160,000 damage done, we are going to lose due to the overall positioning of my team. And I don't like to blame my teammates when, for example, a loss is my fault. And you could look at this game and you could say I should have made certain different decisions at different points. Like maybe earlier on, I shouldn't have been broadside to the Alpha Cap and I wouldn't have taken that single torp. In fact, maybe if I hadn't taken that torp, I'd have more HP to play around with, and maybe that would have helped us win. But ultimately, what would have helped us win is if our team had positioned correctly. If they hadn't all lemming trained toward me on the one side of the map and completely abandoned the other destroyer, the Benson, on the other side. That guy did a fantastic job trying to do what he could to win, but ultimately, with no support, he couldn't do it. So, something to keep in mind, do not send all your ships to one side of the map and cede map control to the enemy. It is usually a recipe for disaster, and the only reason you win in those kind of scenarios is because the enemy team is a complete potato. This one wasn't, so we lose. In any case, I hope you found this discussion valuable. If so, give the video a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.